All right. Hello. Hi, everybody. Podcast. It's
Hello.
been about 2 weeks since our last podcast, and it
This is
was
a
with
very fast
Kalani.
podcast.
This yeah, very fast. We're starting October, so spooky month. I don't know if we're
It's
gonna do
spookies.
anything special, but let's realize the real horror of the situation this week
We'll
because
figure it out in time.
yeah, I think we're gonna talk it out. We're gonna talk it out. Let's hope we could probably keep it very quick. Um, Maybe under an hour. We'll see. But it's not. Yeah, like nothing happened, right, Kalani? Nothing happened in these past 2 weeks.
Nothing happened.
Yeah,
No,
nothing.
it's
No.
been the exact same.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I end the podcast. I'm just kidding.
All right, that's it. Good night. Let's go.
No, okay. Well, I'm just kidding. Yeah, there's been a lot. I think right now we're hearing that the president is doing fine as of recording.
Thank God.
We're gonna mention about how Trump got coronavirus. We've had the debates this past week that
That was a time.
that was something. It was something. And then we've had situations with fires recently too. I think that was throughout the whole September months. I think we got into it a little bit during our last podcast, but some updates about some of our local hiking trails.
Okay, give us the rundown.
Yeah, we'll give a rundown of that, and how Halloween is now canceled. So welcome to our podcast.
Hello.
I hope y'all like and enjoy and subscribe and all of that stuff. But so let's just get started. So since our last podcast, I've been trying to find guests. But in the interim right now, because everything is so busy, so hectic, given how things are going with pandemic, how things are kind of opening up, but also cases are going up. Um, and it being like an election year, there's so many things happening right now, and then October also is the beginning of college applications for a lot of people. So the people I would usually talk to are much more busy now because they're a lot of them are teachers.
Right.
So they're more busy. So like instead of I think if I'm gonna do something before the election, I would have to like be like 2 weeks ahead. Here's an open invitation. If you don't go, no pressure. This is like a mass like to all the teachers I know that's willing to sit down and talk about this like issues. That's gonna be something that I'm gonna have to do later. But yeah, so that's kind of like housekeeping, some behind the scenes stuff. Hopefully, do you have ways to watch My Hero Academia?
I think so.
Yeah,
I think I'm not 100. I'm pretty sure I do. I'm pretty sure that I do.
I do want to finish up that anime season like proper.
Yeah.
So instead of doing one episode per episode of the podcast, I think I want to do like maybe 30 minute to an hour episode talking about My Hero Academia, that final season to come up, because I think it just got announced that they're gonna go back in spring. So that's some anime news in the background. Yeah, and yeah, let's just start talking about the debates. What was that?
So I got through the highlights of the debate because
you didn't see the whole
I
thing
couldn't.
from the very
I didn't
beginning?
have time to. I think I had
okay.
work that day or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that. But yeah. So I went through the.
Good. Spare yourself
highlights.
from what I witnessed with the. I actually saw it with a group, by the way.
I watched it for like a while, and it was a lot of yelling.
Oh yeah.
I watched a lot of people talk about the debate afterwards. I didn't know that like what Trump was doing during the debates is actually like it actually has a name as a tactic.
Yeah, I think it was something. I forgot.
I don't.
It's like two G's or something. Something Gillid Guard or something. I don't know.
I've no idea, honestly.
Yeah, but it basically the tactic is just to drown out the other opponent to the point that they can't argue any of the points that you're trying to make. So it's like
Yeah.
drowning in information. Trump's debate strategy.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, but go on.
Yeah, no, it was just really wild. I think it says a lot that they're changing the debate rules after this one debate.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, what were your opinions on it? Do you have any opinions?
My opinions now as to think there's thoughts of changing the rules, but I'm thinking unfiltered the Trump that would get him unelected, but like make him look like he looks basically bad already. Just kind of like he's digging himself a hole. And
Yeah.
realize our conversation is strictly on the debate. We'll get to the whole coronavirus situation later, but on a debate
Yeah.
level, I'm just like, you're gonna make rules so he stops talking. I think you should just let him talk. Plus, if they change, I would feel if they do change the rule, he would try to change the conversation about changing the rules to this whole conspiracy media trying to change the debate. I'm just like, I don't want to sit around listening to people talk about how media is corrupt in such a way that it's like changing the rules on a debate. That's kind of my thought.
You know, I do wonder like as you mentioned, right, they are changing the rules and whatnot, and you're saying like just to let him talk. I wonder, right, like it does seem like if they do change the rules, it could be considered as a lose-lose situation, right?
Yeah.
Because if you don't change the rules, the same thing is more than likely going to happen again the next time they have another debate. But if they do change the rules, then a lot of people who do support Trump can argue and say that this is basically restricting his right to be able to talk openly, right? So I wonder if that argument is going to come up if those rules are in place. Even though they're trying to be like unbiased, I think everybody understands why they're like, oh, we need to like put more rules in place for the debate. Like I don't think anybody has any reason not to believe it's because of how chaotic it was the last time it happened.
It's just, I think regardless of politics, it was on a base level very chaotic, and I think Trump had a lot to do with it, and I think there was like set expectations that Biden would have been this sort of idea that he wasn't going to be 100% there, you know, like the whole controversy of like, you know, decidedly be Biden or whatever. But what I just saw, it was just I know the phrase gets thrown around like an unhinged debate, and that's what I kind of felt at the end of it. I'm just kind of like, this is less of a debate, and I felt like it was more kind of like almost a reality TV show version of a debate. It was almost a parody of itself.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird to watch.
It really was. Oh gosh, I do wonder because I haven't had a chance to see like everybody's reaction to the debates, like on both parties.
Yeah.
Like for the most part, I've seen it more just like from the left, I guess. But the one that that stood out to me the most was the whole thing about Trump not being willing to like 100% denounce white supremacy.
Yeah.
And how that became a really big issue online. So I just
that was like one of my first
like,
comments with you talking about the debates. It's like, did you hear about the whole Proud Boy situation?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
It was, I don't know. That probably like it made the debate seem a little bit more unsettling to me.
Yeah.
But one thing just out of that that ballpark that I've become much more aware about
Mm-hmm.
throughout my time, like during the Trump presidency and me watching a lot of this news about politics and whatnot, is
Mm-hmm.
when people on both sides use whataboutism as a arguing tactic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you know how like whataboutism, right, is like, if someone puts a point out there, another person will be like, well, what about da 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 da, and it's like, yeah, that's an issue, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't negate the fact that there's still this problem,
I,
so
I I think that whataboutism is like I don't know if I need to be educated about this too, by the way, but is my impressions of this whole all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter.
yeah.
Like how people say it's all like, why is it just Black Lives Matter? It's like, well, shouldn't it all lives matter? And I was just like, isn't that kind of like what about, you know, like
Right.
people trying to
It
use
kind of
that
is a
way?
little bit,
Yeah.
because I think the underlying thing, right, is like nobody is saying all lives don't matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Black Lives Matter movement is highlighting the fact that people who have different like skin tones are treated differently, especially because it's just on how they look, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't like. I think it is in a way a form of whataboutism in the sense that like, nobody has ever said that, all lives don't matter, but it's just there is a reason why that movement exists, and it's to
Yeah.
highlight a racial issue that has been prominent within the United States for decades. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's like there are a lot of different political topics that have like a specific name to it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And people will be like, well, what about it? And I think the thing that people don't understand is even though the movement has a specific name,
Mm-hmm.
right? They are fighting for those exact reasons as well. It's just that the name doesn't necessarily highlight that per se. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. But I don't know. Long story short, ever since the new Trump administration has been put in, and it's probably also because I've paid a lot more attention within these past 4 years to politics in general. I've just been
Right.
much more aware about whataboutism whenever people use it. So yeah.
I feel like that's it. In the phrase of that, well, in the same kind of like thought process of that, is like it is kind of like a gateway into politics because you're asking a question.
Right.
Um, though that question can always be misconstrued as like as an attack. It's still a question about bringing up a relation to an issue, and I feel like
Right.
that can be a way to bridging communication between one side to another.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't know, because it's just so touchy when it comes to having these political conversations. So it's like how can I, for me as an individual, help check self? I need to check myself at the door to make sure I don't get too angry where I can't make a point, but passionate enough that I feel like we can bridge some understanding or some common ground where we can get like an idea of like, oh, I can see where you're coming from, you know. But it's a two-way street. I could check myself at the door and say, okay, I need to make sure I don't get too angry because like I will just end up in this shouting match, just like this debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the other person has to make that agreement too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that other person needs to say, okay, I need to check myself because I don't want to end up having a shouting match either. So it has to be those two things together,
Yeah.
you know. Well, it's
I
just kind
just
of
feel
that's how I kind of dealt with kind of like talking politics with I think to some degree family and to some degree friends and like just like random people around, because like I'll if I don't know them, I would say like I can understand what people are coming from with this idea, but this is what I believe, and therefore stick with me and see if we can come together.
mm, I feel like politics is such a difficult like topic to talk about with friends and family. I
Hmm.
have a lot of people that I know of that don't necessarily have the same political views that I do,
Hmm.
and so usually whenever I maneuver through those conversations, I'll I'll see how they talk about certain things, and usually that gives me a cue about whether or not I can comfortably talk about my views, or if I can't. Just there's sometimes you get like certain social cues that you're just like, yeah, this is one of those.
Yeah, this is not the family member to talk about this.
This is probably not the best conversation topic to really be going on. So I in those kind of situations I try to navigate away from talking
Hmm.
about politics. But it's so funny because I think this particular like couple of years it's become more and more difficult to talk about different things without talking about politics. Like I think politics is very pervasive in a lot of different discussions, and I think that says a lot about how involved our government is with a lot of different things that are,
Hmm.
just in everyday life. And so it's very difficult to have a conversation without having to bring it back to politics, because politics is so ingrained in everything that we're talking about nowadays.
Yeah.
So
That's what I was thinking about. I remember having a conversation with a friend who should not be named. And that there
she
were,
who must not, they who must not be named.
but for uh privacy reasons. But this person was having like, I wouldn't say a rough time with their significant other, or just like they're just trying to figure each other out, and like communication wasn't great. And so I just said, like, my immediate thing was all like, well, do you talk about anything like, or the communication was the issue, like she doesn't have any like personal thoughts on things. And I just said, well, politics, like why don't you just talk about politics? And I realized what I just said there. I'm just like, wait a minute, you're gonna have a like political conversation with a girlfriend you just kind of met. I was just like, oh, wait a minute, that's what I would do. But like, I don't know your relationship to say, oh, have a hard-hitting conversation about politics.
I do wonder how politics will affect relationships in the coming years, because I remember one of the biggest stories, even though I don't know if it's real, that
Hmm.
happened was like there was a lady and a guy who had been married for like a super long amount of time, and then with because of like this particular year they found out they had very opposing views to politics, and they got a divorce because of it.
Mm.
So I do wonder if that kind of situation happens a lot, but it's like
I'm
if you're
sure it
dating so
happens. Yeah, I'm sure it
right?
happens. With the amount
Yeah.
of people in the US, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
wouldn't either, honestly. It's just
Yeah.
like it's bound to come up eventually.
Hmm.
I wonder how big of an impact it'll make on people, I
I think it
guess.
depends. I think, like, in terms of relationship is always communication. There are some people that I've heard like on social media that like dad super conservative, mom super like liberal and like into stones and astrology
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and like looking at themselves and stuff like that. So I'm like, I think it's just communication. And I don't think,
Mm.
when it comes to relationships, politics is just 1% of. And I'm no relationship expert, but it's just,
But in
it's
your
it's
in your opinion,
in my opinion, it's like it always falls under communication. And it's and regardless of politics or anything, it's just like there are some people that may have issues for, pro life, pro choice situation, right? So
yeah.
yeah, so it's like it's having those conversations. And uh for a relationship, like what you're saying about that divorce, I'm like thinking, well, I wouldn't say it shouldn't had ended, but it's just like, I think maybe there was some other underlying things, other politics, that really threw that relationship under the table.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
it's
yeah.
real, if it's real, because this also
That's
kind of
right.
sounds like a BuzzFeed article. No offense to
Yeah.
BuzzFeed, but you know,
Yeah.
when you're
Mhm.
when most of its content is basically surveys on random stuff, I'm pretty sure it's kind of like, how great was the political writing? I don't know. Just my thought.
Yeah.
So any other impressions, like the whole Proud Boys thing, just kind of like, it bothered me to a degree, because it had that same tension feeling when he got elected and the way I was feeling, because I worked very closely
I was
with
just thinking
immig-
that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I work very closely with a lot of immigrant groups. And so
Right.
I was really feeling what his election in 2016 meant for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and him, whether he knew it or not, and I'm sure he probably had an idea who the Proud Boys are. I can't think of a reason why he wouldn't, especially he's the commander chief. He has the FBI. I'm sure that he gets daily briefings. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't, like, he would probably, like, there's a reason he quickly said stand by, like stand back and stand by. Anyways, that's beside the points. But like, going back, when he said that whole thing about stand back and stand by, I'm just like thinking, I'm getting that same feeling I got when it was 2016 and he just got elected. It's like
Yeah.
there's that fear,
I
and a
ooh.
lot. There's probably going to be people that listen to this podcast like, "What are you talking about? I wasn't scared or whatever." Think about it in this way: day to day, I work with people in the immigrant community with different varying degrees of status, and people
Yeah.
that just wants to be here and work. And I see their I wouldn't say 24/7, but like enough to get an idea of how they feel. And like, me being an empathic person, I'm just like, shit, like I feel the same way. And then I brought this back with some of the coworkers that I got, that I work with. I'm just like, they're all feeling basically the same feelings they had in 2016. Also, did I just cut you off?
No, no,
Sorry.
no, no, no.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
No,
So yeah.
I had the same thought at the exact same time. I was just like, actually, as you were bringing it up, I was like, oh my god, I felt the exact same way, and I do think like I I'm not saying that people didn't feel scared, but personally, like of my own opinions, I think when Trump got elected, there was um I did feel some sense of anxiety about it. Just I think based on like maybe not more so based on his like policies and his and just things that he was well okay based somewhat on his policies because he
Mm-hmm.
was talking about building a wall, but some of it was based off the policies, a lot of it was based on his rhetoric as a speaker.
Right.
And I don't know if he has like a writer, who helps to convey his thoughts and he has the teleprompt to read it off of or anything like that. But um, just even though I'm not an immigrant per se, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was born in the United States. I'm an American citizen. My parents were immigrants who came from Vietnam, and to hear him openly talk about just his disdain for immigrants in general, even though it wasn't Asians specifically, I think gave me just some form of anxiety about how he would treat Asians in general. And
Mm-hmm.
just because of how big of a platform he had being a presidential candidate, I did personally believe that his views would influence the views of people who followed him and supported him.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in my mind, it made it very clear that the world, everything around me was going to be very different, and I'd have to be a lot more cautious. Um, and then, when February this year, when COVID hit, even then, COVID didn't necessarily hit in February. It already started by like December. But like when it became much more obvious in America that COVID was going to be a big issue, um, he started talking about, calling the coronavirus very specific names. I don't really want to mention those names because they make me slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but that kind of rhetoric made me much more nervous about going out in public. And I think there were a couple of people who were related to me who had the same kind of sentiment. Like, of feeling like, oh man, if I cough in public, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to go out and just like have to cough in my elbow and just be like, I don't got COVID, but like,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
like explain, like we say it in joking terms amongst friends groups, but it's like, yeah, there is a tacit fear, like at its base level, like sneezing or coughing in public. I do kind of look around and I'm like, it's probably allergies.
yeah, but like it's just like being an Asian during this time, whenever that time was, and like even giving the slightest inclination that I could have had something made me super anxious because of just things that were happening because of like the rhetoric that was being discussed. And
Right.
so, um, you know, it just made me that much more anxious about it. And then when, to bring it all back, when
Right.
we had the debates, and he mentioned the whole thing about standing by, um, just the same level of anxiety and fear hit again.
Hmm.
It brought me back to those feelings of feeling very nervous to do things in public, and now it's like, do I have to be scared that if I go to a polling place I'm just going to see people there with like just waiting, and like I don't know, it just it brings up a lot of different feelings of anxiety because it doesn't it as much as America promotes voting and having a voice and speaking, with everything that has happened in the past 4 years with discussions about immigrants and policies that have been enacted and whatnot, I don't necessarily feel like I have that much of a voice anyways.
I could kind of see that.
Yeah.
I feel like that disillusionment kind of, it does suck, but at the same point, I do encourage people to vote at the
I
same
no,
time.
don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. Like, as much as I have these opinions, go vote. That is your
yeah,
right.
yeah. That
You
is
know.
true. And regardless if there was, say, I guess in a situation, if there was a Democratic candidate that I absolutely hate, right? I'm not gonna say don't vote because I am very much left leaning, right?
Yeah.
I would say vote anyways because there's so much in the along the lines of laws and things that happen.
Yeah.
So please, regardless on how you feel about the president
Whatever your
or the
your
candidate,
political opinions are, you might as well exert your right as an American to go vote because it's very important,
but I
anyways.
do understand that feeling though of being a son or a daughter of immigrants and always fearing being the constant foreigner in a
Yeah.
country.
You know
And
what?
oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I was cutting you off. Go
Oh,
finish
okay.
yours.
It's the thought of whenever I leave the confines of the San Gabriel Valley, where there is an understanding of like, oh, there's this Asian diaspora that's not just Chinese. There's Vietnamese, there's Cambodian, there's Thai, there's South Asian, like Indian, Bangladeshi, and like all of these communities, right, living together in this Southern California area, right? Once I leave the confines of this area, I'm always seen as a foreigner.
Yeah.
And oh, your English is so great. Where were you born? And I'm just like, yeah, I was born in this new place called West Hollywood. Thanks for asking, and enjoy your donuts.
Do you
And
want to
so,
do you want to hear a funny story I have to mention about
oh, okay,
really
yeah,
quick?
yeah.
So, very recently, actually, I was briefly telling you about it the last time we were podcasting, but I never got to tell you the full story. So,
Oh,
I was going to a 7-Eleven, and there was a guy that came up to me, and he was calling out to me, and I didn't really want to talk to him. So
mm-hmm.
I gave him like the acknowledgement nod, but I didn't say anything back, and he kept calling out to me. And then he walked, because I was like looking at something in the shelf, and he walked up to me on this side in the aisle, and he was like, "Oh, I need to get by you." And then I moved in and said, "Oh, excuse me." He was like, "Oh, so you do speak English? I thought you didn't speak any English or anything like that." And I was just like, "Oh,
Yeah,
thanks."
yeah, I remember the story. We were talking about it pre-podcast. I don't think we mentioned it in the
Yeah.
podcast. Yeah,
So that was kind of like a slight slap to the face. I was like, "Oh, Sorry.
I do. I think we both kind of have that feeling too. It's just kind of, you realize I'm just because I look like this. Like, do you just think I am not from here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to the point about voting and being an immigrant, yeah, it just feels in those terms as an immigrant, because there's so much of this rhetoric, why should I vote?
Right.
But I feel like that in itself is super disenfranchising. You know,
Yeah.
there's so much risk that I guess our families has gone through
Mhm.
just for us to live in this country and to represent like kind of the respect of that. And I feel like the respect of our parents would be going in and voting, because
Mhm.
in some cases, I don't know about other immigrant groups, but in some cases those same voting rights don't exist in their home country.
Right.
So on my own personal level, the way I feel about it is that to honor the sacrifice my parents and my grandparents, or like say if it's like a great aunt or uncle that helped you immigrate here, that has like voting is like a signal of respect. And you know how
Yeah.
much we Asian cultures like to, signal respect to each other, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's, if I were to contextualize how, and never really thought about it until this moment, is like, as an Asian American, why voting is important. Consider why your family immigrated to the U.S. in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like probably just to clarify, like while we're both talking about this, our views and opinions don't necessarily reflect the same opinions for every single person that looks like us, or comes from the same
I
racial
guess religious
background,
background, familial
anything,
background,
right?
Asian
It's
yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
this entire podcast is just mainly our opinions and
Hmm.
just based of our own individual experiences, and no matter what your political background is, I think, being able to vote, you should be able to take that and do what you will with it. I think you should vote generally, no matter what
Yeah.
your political affiliation is. Personally speaking, personally, as a young voter, a part of the demographic who is known to not necessarily be the most active in participating in voting in general.
Right.
You know, um, I've only been able to vote through technically two political elections,
Hmm.
um, and for both of them, there was a sort of sense of disenfranchisement that I felt.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't. It, I think there's just some things that I've come to realize you need to kind of like look up, and looking at a voting poll can be very intimidating,
Hmm.
and seeing how a political election like turns out can also really bring down your morale and whether or not you really have a say in voting or not. But I do in the end believe that voting is very important,
Yeah.
just because you may have feelings of disenfranchisement or feeling like you don't necessarily have a voice. I i still believe that it's very, very important to be able to go out and do it, even if you do feel those feelings. In the end, I think one vote can really make a difference, and being
Hmm.
able to, I guess, put in your voice,
Yeah.
your opinion, really just in the end does help. You know,
Yeah. I totally
I mean
agree.
that
Yeah.
it might be different now. So
Yeah. I totally agree, and I feel, yeah, just it feels like we've been kind of beat down since 2016, and then to some degree 2018, when a lot of those when the Voting Rights Act got basically repealed to the judicial system.
hmm
There's so many examples of like voter ID laws and like closing up polling stations and like drop off boxes and stuff like that. Even the most recent kind of news that came out like last week was Texas Governor Greg Abbott basically saying there's only one drop off mail in ballot. Wait, one mail-in drop-off box per county. And that's like, not everybody that has access to a car. And given this is a COVID-19 pandemic, it's like, how are you going to help coordinate bus travel from a home to the location at like a county court where I assume a ballot box would be there to drop
Right.
off your mail-in ballot. So like that in itself is disenfranchisement,
Yeah. I had a conversation with our Australian friend very
soon to
recently.
get to a podcast one day.
One day. But yeah, so I had a conversation with him, right? And he was mentioning in Australia, they have an entire day just taken off, like it's a day off for everybody so they can go vote. And for a lot of Americans, I don't think that happens here. We don't get a day off. You just go if you can. And I feel like this election cycle is going to be very telling about how things are, just because, with COVID right now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to be doing mail-in ballots. And there's been a really big discussion about whether mail-in ballots will be valid. And, there's been, I think, a lot of news on the USPS, like locking up a lot of their mailboxes. And I think in places that don't necessarily get a lot of traffic from people per se, the fact that there was a video from somebody who said it took them 7 hours to just vote.
Yeah.
I think that's really telling, and I do wonder how it's going to be different for people now, because I wonder how is in-person voting going to work if that becomes an option for their voting cycle. So
there's a lot of the thing is like I feel very comfortable given that California puts a lot of resources into voting, and I think that's a great thing. That there's so many options, from voting to pre-check-in for person locations and all of this stuff, the utilization of technology. I feel fortunate that we live in a situation where we can do that, and it's super easy to do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that system is not throughout the whole United States. From West Coast to East Coast. It's like, you have examples where if very robust mail-in ballot system, but because of one I would say, I gotta remember, or I gotta research this more a little bit. But like, I think on the East Coast there was something about how people didn't necessarily sign it in a particular way, and therefore it devalidated all, like, I think it was 20,000 ballots the last election cycle of mail-in. And like, this is predominantly blue state, like New York. I think it was like New York or New Jersey or something that had this issue. So it's just like, we got to figure out what way works best per each state. Unless, if not, then why not have a national system where it can work in those ways? So yeah, it's weird. I don't know. It's the thing. It's the love-hate relationship I have with this whole state and national system, where like each state, if you don't like what one state is doing, you could kind of, if you really wanted to, you can move to a different state. And there's a lot of people that's been doing that lately, and some high profile cases of that happening lately.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. So like, because we're California, we do have a robust voting system versus other places, like say maybe Atlanta. No, not Atlanta. I mean like Georgia or like Texas. That's kind of like actively trying to put these measures of like voter suppression. I like how we shifted from a debate and then a conversation about voting, but I think I like this kind of vibe right now that we're having with this discussion. But
you do?
yeah. Well, in a way, it's like, it's not doom and gloom, but it's actually like putting up questions where we don't actually have the answers, but we have an idea of like, let's start a conversation.
Yeah.
Also, keep remembering, we're not political thinkers per se. We don't live and breathe politics every single day. I feel like I do because of the nature of the work I do.
Yeah.
But in terms of it, it's like, I don't work for like a news station or anything, like,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure it's I wouldn't say this is an ideal. I would feel like it might be very unhealthy for people to be 100% living, breathing politics every single day.
Yeah, no, I think
I
in
have
general you
no
need a
idea.
break.
Yeah, I have no idea. More power to you if you love that. But this is just like having a slight conversation amongst friends, maybe a little cocktails here and there, but like, yeah, I just don't get how people like it's my way or the highway in terms of politics. I'm just like, okay, I guess you don't work way more than I have, so
I
I
don't
I
know.
don't know what else to say.
Yeah, honestly, same. I think that's the most that we could really talk about for that. Honestly, it's just like I don't know. As much as we can talk about politics all day, literally, we can probably talk about it all day, but it's
Yeah,
just it's gonna take a breather
yeah,
from it
yeah.
and do other things like Animal Crossing. I'm just sorry.
That's a after pod. That's a behind the scenes thing. Um, but to
Buy
very
your Animal
deep.
Crossing game today. I'm sorry.
No, sponsored, not
we're not
sponsored.
we're not sponsored.
Yeah, I think Monday is like the last registration day for certain states. I don't know. I think it might be a good idea to maybe post that somewhere. Um,
Yeah, please go vote.
yeah. And so, moving on from the debate conversation, I don't think
Even bigger news.
even bigger news. Regardless if Biden or Trump won, I just feel like it was just a big, just kind of like wow. But away from the debate conversation, we're and this is something that came up in this week, and I thought I was thinking about like, do I even want to do a podcast? And when this news thing came up on Thursday night, I think I was just like, how could I not have a podcast? Let's bring in somebody, and then it happened that somebody happened to be Kalani. So the
Yay!
topic we might close up on this one, but Trump getting coronavirus.
Yeah.
Big yikes. Big yikes. Not a big fan,
Yeah.
but I also don't want him to die from it.
Yeah,
And that's my feelings. I don't know how do you feel?
well, I have the same general opinions as well, when I first heard about it, I think it was like 2 days ago. I was actually going out for a walk and my dad came into my room and he was like, "Hey, did you know that Trump got COVID?" I was like, "What? No, no, he did not."
Hmm.
And then right on the TV outside in my living room, there was a whole like news broadcast talking about how he just, you know, got contracted COVID.
Hmm.
And um, I don't want anybody to get sick from COVID, and that includes Trump. As much as I have my own opinions on the guy, like I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through the experience of being hooked up to a ventilator and stuck in bed and not being able to actively, be okay.
Hmm.
You know, and I do feel bad, but at the same time, with the message that he was promoting to people of not really wearing masks and anything like that, am I really surprised that it ended up happening? Not really. That's generally how I've been feeling. It's like I don't want him to get sick. Am
Yeah.
I surprised that he got sick? Not really.
I yeah, I feel like we're both kind of working on the same kind of like wavelength there. It's I get it. If you are really happy, not you, but like saying the individual that is really happy that he got COVID and got his comeuppance, I totally understand where you're coming from, especially if it's like a family member that's gone through COVID and really I was gonna say drink the Kool-Aid, but like really kind of took the president's advice to heart, um, and that family member were to pass away through the coronavirus, I would totally understand if you're saying that this president got what he deserves. But at the same point, I'm just like thinking, it's I would rather have him live out the rest of his situation, his life, knowing that what he's done to the US and not leave this earth not knowing the extent of his, like, this long-term ramification of his choices, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of me that's, I wouldn't say it's like a Buddhist idea, but it's like more of like a karma idea.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather have him live longer term so he could understand what he did wrong, regardless if he ever do, like, he'll still see it.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's like an election, and as much as I skew center left, it's like I would rather have, on the best case scenario, Biden win, not because Trump passed away, but because it was an election year and it was like done through the vote, not through sickness.
Yeah. I don't know, like, it just makes me slightly uncomfortable to know, like, first and foremost, we don't know where it started from, right? But
Yeah.
like,
There's speculation, but how much is the White House, given what the information the White House is given, right? How much of that is like accurate, I guess.
yeah, and like also it's just like, you know, there's been a lot of discussion about how, like, pervasive COVID is as a like a illness,
Right.
it's like rampage through how, like, retirement homes, and there are like a whole bunch of stories, granted I don't know if they're true or not, of families just one by one losing family members just to COVID,
Right.
so when I hear about, the president contracting COVID and him going to these rallies, and also having, like, a lot of people within his circle get it, like Chris Christie, which I just heard he
Mm.
got it today.
Really?
He
Okay.
just, yeah, he has COVID and has pre-existing conditions.
Oh well then.
So he just got it and got it confirmed today, and who is it? I don't know who Hope Hicks is in comparison to Trump, like how far down the line she is, but there are reports that she works like side by side with him,
Yeah,
you
as an
know
aide, right? Yeah.
right. And so to know that one by one people who are within his circle are contracting it, including the president, it just makes me worried that, like, COVID could theoretically rampage throughout just the government system of people, and systematically just like people will probably drop and get sick, and that's horrifying to think about, that the people in the highest position of power can potentially get sick.
Yeah, and it's the idea that it's a virus, and viruses don't know prejudices. Viruses don't know income brackets. Viruses do what viruses does. They infect and, it's to some degree kill people. Give
Viruses are like honey badgers, they don't give a fuck.
Yeah, exactly. If you learned anything today, just know that, yeah, what you said. Viruses,
Viruses are honey badgers.
they don't give a fuck.
Nope. So it does make me worried. I I don't necessarily agree 100% with the opinions of the people that are currently in the highest power of government, but I do actively recognize that if people systematically start just dropping and getting sick and contract COVID all at once,
Right.
our government will be, knows where it's going to be if that happens.
Yeah.
So
Well, to some degree, there is a decorum of succession, right? President to vice president, from vice president to Speaker of the House, and and like that kind of chain. I don't know if that's the same thing for senators. They get voted in. I don't know if they have that same sort of voting
I,
thing. And then on top of that, what you mentioned, like it's spreading. Realize the average age of a senator is around in their 60s, right? 65.
right, which
Y-
that alone puts them at a higher risk.
yeah, exactly. And and I just learned a new word, a gerontocracy, basically rule by old. and you just kind of think, well, this doesn't look great. And I think regardless of your politics, and regardless if you agree that old people in power mean well, to a situation where the internet has changed so much in American society that it's like, I don't know. I don't want it. See, if I wanted a change in the government, I wouldn't want a virus to do that. I want it to be done through the vote.
Yeah,
You know what I
I would
mean? I
agree.
wouldn't
Yeah.
want like a Herman Cain situation, when he passed away. Someone that still has some political sway and political power. For him to pass away, like when people are saying like hooray for Herman Cain's passing away, it's like, no, that's kind of screwed up, because what's to say somebody else that you agree with passes away? Or what's to say that if you think of it on the bottom line, what this means to your retirement? What does this mean for your own personal 401k? You know what I mean? Because unstable and uncertainty doesn't bode well to long-term investments. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So let's really think this out. Like, yeah, think about it in those terms. Like, I'm not saying I like this guy, right? And
Right.
we mentioned this until the cows go home, that not my favorite. But do I want him to die because of COVID? No, I don't. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't prescribe to that notion as much as I don't know about myself in the future, but as much as I could be petty in my thought process, I'm not gonna go that far to wish death on somebody.
Yeah. I would not either. Like, I am very uncomfortable with the fact, like, knowing that it can potentially get super serious, and even thinking about it, right? Like, if Trump did have COVID at the time of the debates, right? That means that every single person that was in that room debating with him is potentially at risk of being sick.
Yeah.
And they have a 2-week incubation period of having to wait just to see if symptoms pop up.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And you may be healthy now, and that's why I think Chris Wallace. I keep on calling him David Wallace or something.
why David Wallace among all
I
names?
think I'm mistaking him for like maybe an American author. Anyways, um, that's why his statement about how you know he was basically angry with the Trump camp about like they're coming in with masks, but literally when the debate happened, took off the mask, and then the health advisor for the what is it, Cleveland, that area, the doctor there was like, please put back your mask on, and then they refused. So I'm like, just thinking like the basically putting a lot of people at risk, whether they knew it or not. Here's the thing. This goes back to the coronavirus conversation in general. This is what makes the coronavirus scary. You could pass it and you don't know. You
Right.
don't
And
know
then
if you have it.
people have been warning people, like, that is the one exact reason why everyone was saying to take extra precautionary measures, because you won't know if you get sick until you get sick, and that's 2 weeks of time.
Yeah.
So if you're sick and you're in an area with a lot of people, they all now are at risk, and this is the prime, basically petri dish, if you would say, of what COVID was, which was you wear a mask so that if you're talking, whatever germs that are coming out of your mouth don't spread out into the room. And this is literally the example of the highest thing of that could this is what could go wrong in the grandest scale of what could go wrong.
Exactly.
And it makes me super upset, right? Like, because I think we both have the consensus that, as much as we don't necessarily agree with Trump's policies and Trump as the president, we don't want someone to get sick like that.
Yeah.
And for it to just have happened just out of nowhere, right? That just puts everybody in the government at risk. And the government is literally the backbone of what this country is. And if our government all gets sick, then we're basically all screwed.
Exactly. And I'm just like thinking, okay, don't get sick now. Get sick later once you give us a stimulus. Give us
But
some relief before getting sick.
but
Sorry,
aside
that's my
aside
own
from
personal politics.
aside from that though, right? Like I that makes me laugh too much. But but like it just it makes me angry, because out of all the people that should have been taking it seriously, like it doesn't matter, like you know what, people do matter, like the fact that so many people died should have been an indicator of how pervasive this pandemic is. But the fact that the people in the highest level of government didn't take into consideration putting themselves in a safer position in order to stay healthy and maintain government order, and they didn't even have the audacity, not the audacity, the ability to just do that, it just makes me upset.
Yeah.
Because out of all the people that should have been extra careful about it, it would have been everybody in government, and nobody apparently was. And that just it makes me so angry, because they should have taken it seriously. They were the only group of people that 100% needed to take it seriously, and they
Mhm.
didn't.
To keep things running, to keep the gasoline going, So we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. What this means on paper is that if Trump gets worse, which recently he came out saying that he's doing fine for now.
Right?
But if he does gets worse, it's like until he recovers in the next 13 of 10 days, that's 10 days he can't campaign. Good on the Biden camp for not really basically I think what I've heard last is that they're pulling all their attack ads from Trump and just only keeping it to the policy. So they're trying to be the class act, just saying like, you know what, he's already sick. We shouldn't really do attack ads right now. So
Yeah.
I'm just all like, okay, I get it. Um, and we'll see what happens. If they're gonna have to end up doing a Zoom debate, which also terrifies me because
That can
really
only go wrong in so
that can
many
only
different
go wrong in
ways.
so many ways. I would rather have them in person. If there's like a giant glass deep
You know, I
panel separating them, I would rather have them do it in person.
from what you were saying earlier,
Hmm.
it did seem like they were taking the necessary precautions in order to make sure both president elects would have been okay. Well, the president and then the
Candidate.
candidate, right? And it seemed like they were trying their best to at least make sure that they were okay at the time.
Hmm.
But like I was mentioning earlier, like Trump has historically throughout this pandemic not really given a fuck, I guess would be the best. No, and that's too straightforward. I don't think he necessarily believes that wearing a mask is necessarily the right, like a necessary thing. I think that can be objectively said.
Yeah,
Um
I think part of it is that I think his base took it up, therefore he needed to take it up as an issue.
it could have been, yeah.
I
I mean,
feel like a
obviously,
lot of things, yeah. I think
it's
Trump,
hard to say, right?
it's hard to say, but I feel like Trump is his own way of you know how there's this stereotype within the entertainment industry where like actors just want to be loved, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, hey, I don't know the guy, but my impressions from given his whole 4 years is that he seems like somebody that just he wants to be loved by other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that a lot of politicians go through this too, is that whatever the people that voted for me want, I'll have to say because I need them to continue supporting me, which
Right.
only makes sense for a politician. So therefore, if his constituents say that masks don't work, masks, this is a conspiracy for by the Democrats or whatever, it's like whether he believes it or not, he has to go for it.
Right.
And I feel like this is something that not many people understand about politics is that it's not about the personal, even though it's been kind of shifting in those ways. It's about the what your people what you're trying to bring to the table for the people you represent.
Yeah.
That's the reason why it's called a representative government. You need to represent the people that elected you in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about the conversations where I feel like not many people are understanding why. Like, how could Trump not take this seriously? Well, if you think about it, if he already had a base that are super skeptical about immigration, super skeptical about the other coming in and taking the jobs, right? And it's true that the virus came from China. Oh, there you go. Blame China,
Yeah.
blame all the immigrants, blame them. So, and once people took a hold of that, then the president's like, you know what? If they're saying it, I gotta say it too. That's
Yeah.
what I feel. I don't know if Trump feels the same way, but I just gotta feel like, as somebody that wants to see the humanity in everybody, I gotta think it's probably him wanting to be loved by people that voted for him in the first place, to have them continue to love him
Yeah.
in some way. I don't know.
Or
I don't know if this is something that people have been considering.
I don't
I don't
know
like the guy.
either.
Remember, I feel like I have to reiterate this. Not the person I would have chose, but this is what my personal reading of that situation would be.
Yeah. It's just there's so many things that could be said about everything that's been happening, and like just with COVID, just in general, the pandemic, like disregarding everything else, the fact that politics have been weaved into talking about COVID just makes me kind of upset,
Yeah,
because
agree.
it's like COVID isn't related to I mean, it shouldn't be related to politics, because
Mhm.
everything that's been happening currently right now is basically being divided up by party lines.
Right.
You have a camp of people who believe that wearing a mask should be mandatory, and you have another camp of people who believe that wearing a mask is an infringement on your freedom of whatever, right? Or your freedom or your rights. I think that's the better way to put it. I didn't really know how to word it, but anyway. So it's like, a lot of different discussions about COVID have been divided up depending on what political party you firmly believe in.
Right.
Granted, not everybody, not everybody is exactly like that, but a good portion of people are. And I individually don't believe that COVID should be discussed in terms of politics and policy, because that shouldn't be the reason. And so a couple of weeks ago, when I guess Trump was doing some kind of discussion, I don't know if it was kind of like one of his how he has like those meetings where it's
Coronavirus briefing.
televised and stuff. Yeah, I don't know if it was that or what it was, right? But he was having a discussion. He was saying, well, if you consider the blue party or the Democratic Party, they're doing a lot worse than we are if you take away all of the blue states. And I'm like, that shouldn't matter, because it's not important what what your political lean is. It just matters whether or not you take care of COVID as a pandemic. It
Yeah.
shouldn't matter what you believe in or your policy. You just need to make sure that everybody is okay.
It's like
And so,
it's a signal for the public to say you're doing something right. And I think this is something that I mentioned very early in the beginning, whether it was a podcast or just saying it this I want to say in person, but like saying this in a digital format, is that I don't care what you believe in. If Trump were to handle coronavirus in a way that I believe that he did, then he would probably be in a better standing than than he is right now. Like,
mhm,
on a political conversation, if you were to spin this in a way that, how can I make Trump look better? I would make a time machine, go back to March, go back to February, and force him to make sure takes this seriously. Because if you signal to people that say take this seriously, this is something that you need to get ahead of, then I'm pretty sure we would be having a different conversation come October, and he would probably not have
right.
coronavirus right now. We
Yeah.
would be
Honest
seeing a different timeline. We're not on the Marvel
honestly
timeline.
honestly, like I genuinely, and I say this as honest as I possibly could say it, I I genuinely wished, like, his response to COVID was slightly better,
Yeah.
because if we had prepared for it and knowing that he knew about it by January, and he had a lot of missed opportunities to be able to discuss the necessary ways to handle the pandemic, plus the fact that, you know, the previous two presidents that had been in office had playbooks on potential issues if a pandemic were to occur, and none of this kind of fell into place when the pandemic finally hit. It, you know, it makes me slightly upset. And, you know, I genuinely wish, like, I really do want him to have a good response to COVID. Genuinely. I mean it as honest as I potentially could make it for myself. I really wish he had he was very solid and his response was good. And I could, you know, maybe like someone could come up to me who was a Trump supporter and they can tell me, yeah, he did a really good job. And I would honestly have been like, yeah, I agree with you. He did. But I can't say that because I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Man,
you take?
this podcast turned bleak.
Yeah. Well, are you surprised? Given
No.
what happened in a week. Do you? I guess we could close out in this slightly lighthearted, but still same situation. President has COVID. Do you take stock in what people are saying on both ends of the political spectrum that this is a conspiracy?
I try my best to.
To
I
not
do
listen,
follow
or just to
to do. I
okay.
try listening to both sides,
Okay.
and um, and that's more so because I feel like if you just listen to one source, you can't really get the full picture of things. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, I sometimes when I listen to like commentators who are much more Republican leaning, I can't understand why they're saying the things that they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and not in the sense that like I don't think they're like making any sense per se, but it's like it's there's so much evidence to back up the opposite of what they're saying. So it makes it really difficult to listen to it and be objective when I clearly feel like I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
And also it just listening to both sides, like both the Democratic and Republican commentators and whatnot, right? Like I will say that there are some times where I do think that sometimes like when somebody on the left part, like on the left leaning side says something, I might be like, I don't 100% agree with that either. It's come up every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
But more than not, I tend to agree with their opinion slightly more.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like outside of that, right? Outside of me trying to listen to both sides as much as I possibly can just to get a better picture of just everything that's happening. Listening to both sides discuss the exact same topics in entirely different ways makes me feel like I'm being gaslighted to the nth
Yeah,
degree.
to the nth degree. Yeah. This is why I
So,
kind of changed my news networks. Not to say that I'm leaning more it's one way towards the other, but like I used to watch this MSN NBC
mm-hmm.
show in the morning. It's like a morning show. It's called The Morning Joe.
Oh yeah.
And the co-host is like a female
Mm-hmm.
co-host, but I feel like she never ends up getting a word out because there's this kind of white privileged dude that's always having his ideas spoken out, and I'm just kind of
White
like
privilege, dude.
yeah, that's not just the whole thing. It's just, you know, I just kind of felt I'm listening to an hour conversation where it's not a conversation between amongst two people. It's a conversation of one guy talking at somebody about how he's feeling, and then she's kind of chiming in one way or the other, you know? And I'm
Right.
kind of like, do I want to watch this anymore? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
oh, just kind of bad feeling. And then I found this channel that was kind of born on the internet called The Hill, and it also gets streamed onto on digital TV. So like
Mm.
people with just TV connections can still tune in the morning. But I watched them. I'm like, oh. this sounds like a conversation I would be having with somebody that, like, if I'm center left leaning, I would have the same conversation with somebody that's center right leaning. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I'm like, oh, this I kind of identify with this because like there's some things like I can understand where a Republican person comes from. Like I think ultimately if you get a Democrat and a Republican and like really get deep into what they believe in, I think you could really get deep into that. I think they believe strongly that family, like they still believe in family values, they still believe in community, but like there's just two different approaches that they both get into, and they all happen to be American,
Yeah. Hmm.
quintessentially American. So that's why I kind of skewed to watching that versus MSNBC. But I do still watch like Rachel Maddow. I do watch Bill Burr time to time. I do see the late night circuit here and there.
Yeah.
Kimmels. I kind of wish David Letterman was still doing his thing, but I think Stephen Colbert is still okay. But it's I wouldn't say it is what it is, because now it is what it is. It's now has a different connotation now, given what Trump said about coronavirus. But it's how I feel in this current moment, and I could change. Like honestly, there's something that I think people should realize: people change over time.
Yeah.
Good on Bernie for staying consistent for all these years, but
A true
for
man to his
me,
word.
for me, I don't think like people evolve from time to time. It's like you know given the Bernie exception, like people tend to change. You don't, and you got to give people that benefit of a doubt, because if Trump at one point in the 80s and the 90s used to skew Democratic and now is super Republican, super conservative, I'm like, you best believe he changed somewhere down the line.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just
The com-
everything about. Go
oh,
go
sorry,
first.
sorry. The conversations was fun. We're having this kind of conversation about left and right. My question originally was, do you believe that there was any conspiracy around him getting coronavirus or him not having coronavirus, where some people are saying?
I have heard a
But
lot of discussion about that.
let's continue on this left-right dichotomy right now.
Well, just to dabble into it very quickly, I do wonder how different like the discussions of COVID will be if Trump gets better, right?
We'll
Like
see.
it, like
Yeah.
if okay, theoretically, right? Let's say that like benefit of the doubt, he really actually does have it, and I do firmly believe that he does have it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't doubt it, you know. Um, so so if he does have it per se, right? But he is one of like, knock on wood, probably better if this is the case. He doesn't exactly exhibit a lot of the extreme symptoms of COVID to the highest degree, and he gets better. Will his political rhetoric change to then become, "Look at me, I actually got over COVID. COVID can't even stop me."
Ooh, that's a very realistic year.
Right? Because
Yeah.
if he does get better, right, that means that he technically defeated COVID. So if I do wonder if his rhetoric will then become something along the lines of like, look, even I could handle it. It's no big deal. If I could get through it, it was just the flu.
I would hope that it would be a Boris Johnson situation where Boris Johnson is this kind of model of like English conservatism. But, when he got it and got out of it, he's just like, you know what? The NHS is awesome. The National Health Service is amazing. Like I wouldn't survive if it weren't for them and the work they did.
Right.
Um, and I would hope it would be more that versus what you're saying, because it's you would hope it comes out in a way where he has this realization, oh shit, this is serious. This is something that we need to take seriously. We need to be tactful. We need to understand on an economic level what is really impacting people. And and maybe saying that maybe that more eviction moratorium was something that's, let's take care of that now,
Yeah.
let's make sure people are good by the end of this pandemic. I would rather want to see that versus, oh, I finished, like, I got COVID and got over it, it wasn't a big deal. I would rather have him have this like existential, oh, let's fix this because now I realize how serious something like this would be. And I agree, I'm also of that camp that I firmly believe he does have it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you lie about having COVID to come back and say, or like be found out down the line that, oh, in reality you didn't have COVID?
Right.
I would feel that would be a disservice to not only that he would be lying, but also it's the worst signal you would give to your voting, like the people who vote for you.
Right.
Yeah.
See, like I want that to be the response too. Like if he were to catch it, like for him to take it more seriously afterwards once he got better, because he has the experience of what happens. Go get your headphone. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
But yeah, so I would want his response to be much more, like him to be more active in his response. But from how things have been going recently, I could very well see it being like a I defeated COVID type of situation. And honestly, like I could probably, yeah, no, I could see it 100% going that way because, he's had discussions of how, oh, we're doing completely fine.
Mhm.
Cut to the whole screen of like 2 million Americans have died, and the Always Sunny in whatever that song, the dun 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 dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
and so it's like in history's past, he's said a lot of things that have opposed what like graphical data has been explaining. So, do I really want him to have a more active response to COVID and to be much more serious about it? Yes. Do I firmly believe that it's going to happen? Not really.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we could just wrap it up there. Uh,
Yeah.
so, if you enjoyed our political conversation,
This is like the most political one we've had so far.
the Bryan and Kalani hour. If you want more of this, I don't know.
More politics discussions.
Oh my god! Imagine.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh my god. All right. I hope you enjoyed. And also, thank you for sticking with us given the circumstances. And I've actually had things like, oh, where was your podcast last week? I'm just like, oh shit, I can't believe people are watching.
Someone said that?
It was my uncle. It's family. At least I know they're watching, I guess.
Yeah,
But
that's pretty good. That's
that's
pretty
good.
good.
That's good enough for me. So thank you for sticking in. I hope you enjoyed. I hope for more anime content. I'm still kind of missing that. I've been watching through this whole pandemic. I've been rewatching all the Studio Ghibli collection. And
Nice.
since I have HBO Max, I have that in my wheelhouse. I also realized that Food Wars is on HBO now, but only the fourth season, weirdly enough. So, kind of weird.
It's a bit strange.
Very strange. So if you like what you see, subscribe, do all that beautiful stuff. Please, 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 with our conversation about COVID, be safe. Take care of yourself, y'all. And
Yes.
on top of that, please vote. It's coming up.
Yes.
The last day to register is for a certain not countries, certain states is like we're coming up on Monday. Please do. And if you vote now, you tend to be a lifelong voter. So please, please just do that. Just do that.
Yes, please. Please.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right. Goodbye.
Bye. Okay.
Bye.
All right. I'm stopping the